we are not actors like you see on TV. That's a different school. That's called TISH. This is actually the School of Professional Studies. And what we do is students pick a company in the beginning of a semester, and then they learned finance by making business recommendations. So in my case, my name is George Benaroya. I work as a CFO during the day. I started my career at Procter & Gamble, then Tetra Pak, Nivea, and now I work in private equity. Now, once per week, I get to do something I love, and that is to teach this finance class. So maybe, Patrick, we go to the next slide, and I'll show them how this goes. So these students, on the first session, they were asked to pick a company, any company they wanted from all the Fortune 500 companies. And they picked Starbucks. And then they have been learning about finance by making business recommendations every week. So the first one they did, on the next slide, was about headcount. Imagine that you were working at Starbucks or at a different company. How many people do you think you need to hire this year and next year? And this is what Fabia and Daniel recommended. Now, what we see on the next slide is what will you do if you don't have enough product to sell? I've been now to every country in the world, all 193 of them. And one of the things that I like to look is how people make decisions. Now, take a look on the left-hand side. What you see is that before the pandemic and now, when students had to choose between prioritizing all clients or new clients, they were split. It was even, right? Half and half. But during the pandemic, when we didn't have plastic gloves or masks, no one did. All of them picked the old clients. None of them went for the new clients, even if they would have made more money doing that. So if you're one of the students joining online, what will you do? Let's go to the next slide and see what Mahek did. So as part of her project, she went around and she figured, okay, this is how I will prioritize new clients and old clients to solve this dilemma that we have. The other thing that we learned in class, which is on the next slide, is how much will you increase prices? So what Marky did was quite clever. She increased prices on some categories and decreased prices on others. So overall, she was able to, get a 7% price increase. But one key thing that we also learned in class is not just the numbers or the formulas. We try to learn how to use numbers in a meaningful way to persuade others. Now, take a look at the next slide. She is not in my class. But when I was at Procter & Gamble in my first job, that happened to us, right? We did a price increase, and our number one client rejected the price increase. So what we do in class, going to the next slide, is we learn how to communicate a price increase, how to explain it to customers. And this is how Shaima and Juan Felipe did it. And you'll be meeting all these students with the different questions in a few minutes. And then towards the end of the semester, what we do is, on the next slide, we invite the most senior executives, the ones who are making these decisions on a daily basis, to share with us how they do it. And today with us is Aaron Koransky, the executive leader of Starbucks. Mr. Koransky is also in charge of Starbucks Reserve, both the brands and the roasteries and so on. The chairman of Starbucks, Howard Schultz, once said that the roasteries were key, were very dynamic and an integral part of retailing. And that is what we would like to learn today, different tips on retailing. And maybe, Patrick, you can stop sharing the screen now with the slides. So what I like to do when I invite speakers to this class is I like to invite people who will really motivate others, who will really make a difference. And what I would like you to think about is that there are like 400,000 people working for Starbucks, and they would all like to have the chance that we're having today. Mr. Koransky or Aaron is just starting this new assignment, so he has all the stores to visit. He has to be in Seattle tomorrow. And despite all that, he took the time to give us a chance to ask questions. So for all of that, welcome and thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
So Aaron, go ahead. I don't know if you want to, start with any remarks or any, comments.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, George, you and I have been talking about potential opportunity for some time. I certainly have an affinity for the NYU campus, the NYU population. My prior role, I don't know how much you went into that, but we have a store there. And we have one of our busiest stores there. So for those that visit, thank you. But we also recognize we have more opportunity there. But I think even as you kicked it off, finance, I have a great affinity for finance. It's really where I started my journey at Starbucks. The early days of my professional career was within healthcare. Literally my first job was washing pots inside of a kitchen. I worked my way through multiple back of house roles. But always gravitated towards finance. And towards the end of my time in healthcare, this is a little over 20 years ago, I ended up in a space of primarily business development. And so if you think about that from a healthcare standpoint, is what are the services, what are the resources that you are building up to support a community? And the people living in those communities, what are the needs that they're going to have? Where are they on their life stage? And what are the investments that you're going to make in terms of capital outlay? And how do you in terms negotiate how you'll be reimbursed for that? And so that is an interesting space. However, I was drawn towards being a part of something bigger than myself. And the opportunity impact that, I think Starbucks, I saw as a customer, Starbucks having, drew me to this place. And my first role at Starbucks was a financial analyst supporting a business. And 20 years later, I look at those early days of really, truly understanding the mechanics of our business, how we make money, how our business partners make money, the dynamics in the marketplace. Certainly, some of I'd love to get a copy of the slides, George. A couple of the studies that the students have done, those are all the questions that we're asking ourselves constantly. And, and through that journey, both in a finance space, have ultimately led into an opportunity within business development. So building relationships with our licensees. So on that, one of your initial slides where you showed the different brands and companies that you all evaluated, some of those were our business partners. And genuinely, that's what kept me in the licensed portfolio business for so long, is the opportunity to work with other companies, the opportunity to see how they think about the industries that they operate in, the different customer dynamics, the different customer use cases, and how together we can create something truly remarkable and special, including opening up stores on colleges across the US. So yeah, George is correct. I recently, even during the course of our conversation, I've taken on a new role at Starbucks leading our Siren Retail, which is our Roasteries and Reserve locations. You are all fortunate enough to live in a city where you've got 3 of them. Between our New York Roastery in Chelsea, we have a great Reserve location in Greenwich, and then our newest store in the Empire State Building. And thinking about some of the questions that you all have, I think there's gonna be ways for me to weave both my new role and some of the journey that I've been on for the last 5 or 6 weeks, doing the work and spending the time in our locations, talking to customers, talking to our partners, understanding our craft, but also triangulating that against my previous experiences, and whether that is leading business development within a retail model, more of a franchise model. We don't use the F word at Starbucks. We call them licensees instead of franchisees. I was a part of the food service business, and then certainly had opportunities in marketing and category in my journey, supporting different functions. So hopefully what you're going to get from me is a very transparent conversation. I love the way this is teed up as a fireside chat, because that's how I like to engage with my team. Later this week, I have my first town hall with my new organization, and it's to be this exact type of forum. It's the way I talk about it is open shots on goal. Like, ask me anything, and you're going to get the most transparent answer I can give you. So anyway, thanks for the time, and appreciate all of your interest in Starbucks.
Super. And so the way we do this is that the students ask questions themselves. So Sarah, would you like to start? Yep.
Hello.
Hi there.
So first of all, I wanted to say thank you, Mr. Koransky, for joining us today and taking the time out of your day to answering our questions. This really means a lot to us.
Of course.
And my first question is, customer traffic is very important for a company like Starbucks.
Yeah.
How can a company meet the challenge of increasing customer traffic, especially since other large competitors like McDonald's, which has seen growth of more than 10% this year, are kind of leading the way when it comes to customer traffic? And the question is, can and will Starbucks surpass that performance?
Excellent. And thanks, Sarah, for the question. I think when we talk about financial health and financial performance at Starbucks, certainly we talk about comp sales or comparable sales growth over prior year, but the two biggest driver of that is footfall or traffic, the number of customers walking through our doors, if you will, and also one of the the earlier slides you shared, what is the price or what is their average ticket that they're spending? And so the question you're asking is the root of the opportunity. How do you meet the needs of the customers, no matter where they are and how they want to engage with us? And when they do come in, how do we make sure that it's a great experience and it's done in a way that meets their needs? And so if you look at the makeup of our portfolio, it has evolved over the last, bunch of years. The idea of Starbucks, which, was inspired by, Italian coffee houses, which are, slow, community gathering, a place to be, a place to perhaps meet a client, perhaps to do a business deal, or perhaps even a place to do work. But what has happened over the course of time, particularly in the US, what we've seen is the need for the on-the-go business and the grab and go. And so you've seen us increase the number of our stores that are drive-through. And more recently, you've started to see us increase the number of stores that support mobile order and pay or order ahead, which we offer to our loyal customers or Starbucks Rewards customers. And so by increasing the number of channels and the number of ways that Starbucks customers can get their order, to place their order, to gain access to Starbucks, it is as a result driving more transactions. Now, during the pandemic, and I would say even more true now, post-pandemic, our demand is greater than our supply, which is a good problem to have. And so we're in an acceleration point as a business, as a company, and increasing the number of stores that we have. I think what the art that we have now, along with the science of data, and I think there's a question later on about data, is what type of store does that community need? What is the makeup of those stores that we have in the community? Meaning, I still need a place to sit and stay, right? I need a third place. Maybe I need a store where there isn't a lobby at all, and I'm walking to work and I just want to grab my coffee on the way. Or perhaps I've moved out into the suburbs and I want my drive-through. And so we look at the mix of what our retail footprints are, what stores we have, what is the throughput that each of those stores can take, what is the customer need, and ultimately that allows us to set up to be able to address and capture the cups in the market. And that's really how we talk about it. We talk about the number of cups in the market. And so we're really focused on making sure we have store placement. So then that's one. That was a long answer, but that's one. Two is operational efficiency. And so as we are looking at our equipment and the approaches, the operation approaches that our partners take, we're always looking for seconds and moments to make it easier. And that is actually driving innovation. It's driving a different way in how we think about the entirety of the supply chain. How do we think about sustainability's role in that? So how do we remove packaging? How do we remove the way we're actually delivering the product to the customer? And by removing those steps, it's actually removing time from our partners, the baristas. We talk about our partners because all of our partners own stock in the company. Therefore, they are a partner. They're not just an employee. They're invested in this business. But every moment that we can take out of their work actually increases our throughput, which is fundamentally your question. Now, once you have the location, how do you maximize that location? So we are looking at routines and operations. We're also looking at equipment. Later this year, we're launching a brewer machine. You can actually see it in some of my locations there in New York, Empire State Building and the New York Roastery. And it's called the Clover Vertica. And the Clover Vertica allows us to have on-demand, fresh, grind to brewed coffee in under 30 seconds. Now today, that routine takes a much longer than that. Even though we're dispensing, the build of grinding the coffee, to brew the coffee, to then have coffee ready that you're then having to turn every 30 minutes, that takes a lot of labor. So we are looking at what are the right ways, and we can introduce we'll call it automation and innovation that will ultimately increase our throughput without compromising craft. Does that help?
Yes, it did. Thank you so much for your thorough answer. I really appreciate it.
Got it.
Super. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
So I get to ask only one question, and to give you a bit of a background, I only use Starbucks at home. I use the espresso, and this one sells for about $18 a kilo. Now, to prepare for your visit, I went to the Roastery, and I tried this one, the reserve one, right, which sells for about $100 a kilo. Now, for those of you who haven't tried, when you taste this, you will see why it sells for this price. I was extremely impressed by your colleagues, Aaron. I asked one of your colleagues, which one should I pick and so on. And she explained everything to me about the different beans and the different qualities and so on. Yeah. And what I thought when she was so nice and well prepared was, how do you find people like her?
Yeah.
Now, when I look at the store, the customers look the same, right? They don't look any different. But when I look into Google Maps, I see that they stay quite a bit longer, right? Sometimes 2 or 3 times longer than the normal customers.
Yeah. So
the other questions that came to my mind is, are their expectations different? Do they spend more money per transaction? And basically, altogether, are the reserve customers different than the other customers?
Yeah. Well, first off, thanks, George, for coming by the location. Thanks for the feedback. I'd love to get the name of the partner, if you remember, maybe offline, so I can just recognize her, because the experience that you have is truly the aspiration of the experience every customer should have. Certainly in all of Starbucks locations, but more specifically, more importantly, I think for at least germane to the role that I have in our Roastery location. So the location that you visited is our Roastery down there in Chelsea. We call it the New York Roastery. And it is intended to be the highest reflection of our brand, all of our brand aspiration. In the Star R, the reserve coffee, really started when, as a company, how we wanted to get closer to the farmer and closer to how do we think about the business sustainment, how do we think about that ecosystem and that economic system, and how do we support that? And by doing that, what we found along the way were these micro lots, or very, very small plots of land that these farmers were growing these unbelievable, really small lot coffee that as great of a coffee it is. And I'm looking at the notes from your picture here with notes of nectarine and toasted macadamia, right? Like, there's not every coffee can get that. And what a special reserve coffee that we can introduce, that we could roast, that we could highlight in locations like the one you experienced in New York. And we certainly can't buy enough coffee to put it in the 15,000 retail stores that we have in the US, let alone the 35,000 that we have globally. So we offer those small lot coffees in just really a handful of stores. And so I'm glad to hear that the experience matched the quality of the coffee, because that's truly the intention. Now, how we find partners that give you that experience as you described is there's two ways that I would talk about that. One is with Starbucks Reserve and our Roasteries, it's the pinnacle of our brand, right? If you were to put our brand in a call it a pyramid of growth, like in differences of experience around convenience all the way to a flagship location, which is what these Roasteries are. What that does is it actually creates a gravitational pull of talent that wants to be a part of the highest reflection of our brand. And, many partners, and potentially the ones that you met. In fact, when you go into our Roasteries, you'll see the partners list the country or the city or the neighborhood that they're from, because they chose to be a part of this experience. And so it's usually our very best and brightest. It is usually our partners that have a ton of passion around coffee and the customer experience. And so we do get a lot of internal draw from internal partners that are relocating to be a part of these roasteries. The other is really about the hiring, and that's not always easy, especially in this market right now. And so hiring for human connection versus capability. Hiring for someone who's going to care and is able to build a connection in a moment, which will get to the question you have about the types of customers that were there. That has that just, I don't know. I think it's the soft skills, the EQ that is actually often more important than whether they can steam milk. Because we can teach them how to steam milk. They taught me how to steam milk during my immersion. I make pretty nice microphone now, but it's how do you find the right individual that feels comfortable, they feel like they can go connect with anybody, that they're not going to be behind a bar where they're more focused on their tasks, they're actually more focused on the experience. So that's the two ways in which we gain the baristas. To answer the question about the customer, I think that's kind of the beauty and the privilege and the responsibility of these roasteries. Most of our customers are tourists. Most of our customers come to our location once, maybe in their life, maybe in a year, maybe. And so the halo effect and the importance of that experience and that brand affinity that hopefully you built, George, by having that amazing experience and tasting this curated lot of coffee that tasted unlike anything that you had before, and you want to go back to your home and gosh, you want to go visit our Starbucks that's in your neighborhood. That's the responsibility of these flagship locations. And so we do think about that customer. And so we do pay attention. It's funny, we had a QBR this week, a quarterly business review this week, talking about our business. And when we talked about our business performance, we were more focused on what's going on externally around us. What's going on with cell phone traffic within the neighborhoods? What's going on with TSA traffic within airports? What's going on with the infill rates of corporate offices in downtown metro locations? So we want to know, because we're destination flagship retail, like who's coming into the market and how can we either insert ourselves into that value chain, one, or two, how do we make sure that just the opportunity to go to the highest reflection of Starbucks, that we're there and open for open hours and operations, that we have a very unique offering. You saw the bar upstairs. We have a restaurant in the back. We have different malts and different drinks that you can try, different experiences, the olive oil beverages we just launched, etc. Things that you can uniquely only get at that destination retail, that hopefully that customer goes back and tells their friends about, and spreads the brand love around Starbucks from just a moment and a connection with an individual like you had.
Super. Thanks very much.
Hey, hello, sir.
Hi there.
Yeah, so first I want to say is thank you very much for giving us a chance to ask you questions. And the question I want to ask is also about reserve stores. Yeah. So we all know that Starbucks reserve stores offer unique and elevated coffee experiences for customers, and is giving a lot of positive feedback. But one reason that a lot of customers don't want to try reserve coffee is because of the price. And so my question is it possible for Starbucks to set an area in each of the normal store to let customers try to taste their reserve coffee, and so they may have a chance to know its difference and the unique feature of the reserve coffee?
Excellent. Thanks for the question, and thanks for the push. I think that's interesting. One of the things I mentioned about the reserve coffees are they are small lot, right? And so our ability to create scale and reach for this coffee, just from a production standpoint, is limited. But I think your question is right. I think your question is interesting. And today, we are in I would say a very small number of non-reserve locations. So call it, kind of core Starbucks stores across the US. We're sending more than a handful of bags of coffee to those stores, so that those communities that aren't in Chicago, that are not in New York, and that are not in Seattle have an opportunity to taste this really rare coffee, this really unique coffee. The challenge of that model is it becomes a merchandise retail model only, and that it puts the dependency on the customer to how they brew the coffee at home. So I don't know how you brew your coffee at home. I have an espresso maker that I use, and I have French press, but to get the full, I'd say the full experience of a reserve coffee, you need to do it likely a French press. You could do it in a Chemex. We have a couple other brew methods that really extract the flavors of the coffee, almost like a wine, where it's gonna land on your palate differently, or on your mouth. You're gonna pick up different flavor notes, and it is something really distinct. So going back to your question of how do you create reach and make it easier for the customer to get to it. So I mentioned the Clover Vertica is one of our innovations that we are launching. We haven't, and certainly in the stores I'm responsible for, but over the course of the next little over a year plus, we're going to be putting those same machines in all of our core stores. And by doing that, it allows us to increase the varietal, or the variety of coffee that we can bring to market, which will then increase the number of stores that we could send reserve coffee to, and then make it easier for our partners to brew that coffee, to even if it's offering a sample of that coffee before we're going down the path of discounting. I don't know if your question is that should we discount our coffee? This is a little bit of scarcity model. And so how much price do you need to give on something that's super scarce? And how do you maintain the preciousness of a coffee that literally there may only be 200 pounds of in an entire year? And so how do you make it accessible? I think that's interesting. How do you build affinity and awareness towards the reserve brand or the reserve concept, so that maybe you're not getting the $50 per half pound like George got, but we do have other coffees that do have a lower price point. I think you can get as low as $18 per half pound for a reserve coffee, but most of those are at a premium. But we do want to make it a bit more accessible. I think the Clover Vertica is going to help us get there.
Super. Thanks very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you got it.
Yep.
Good evening, Mr. Koransky. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Fabia. So in one of the assignments I did for this class, I found out that during the fourth quarter earning call Starbucks had last November, the president of Starbucks North America mentioned how customized beverage has generated a $1 billion increase in sales for the company. So what do you think is the biggest driver in the increase of demand for this customized beverage? And do you think this trend is something that is going to be sustainable and long lasting?
Yeah. Thanks for the question. It's there's a couple of things in there, and maybe allow me for a minute to go in the Wayback Machine, and then I'm going to come back to your question on near term. During the 07 and 08 economic crisis, my responsibility at that time was looking after a set of licensed stores inside of grocery stores. So we were inside of our partnership with Safeway at the time. And I remember it was like late 06, 07, 2006, 2007. We saw a downturn in our sales and our traffic. And it was we were sort of the canary in the coal mine, so to speak, on that something was going on with our economy. And that we actually saw as disposable income went away, our customers were walking into those stores less and actually had less disposable income to have an affordable indulgence, which Starbucks is. Okay. Now, let me explain to you why I'm telling you that story and why it's germane to your question. In 08, late 08 and 09, what we introduced to start to recovery was the idea of $1.50 iced coffee. Okay. And $1.50, which was oh, by the way, back then wasn't a discount on iced coffee. That's just how much iced coffee costs for a tall iced coffee. And it was an affordable price point. It was a great entry price point that you probably have $1.50. We have this massive condiment cart. You can go doctor up your coffee. You can put mocha powder in there. You can put cream in there. You can put sugar in there, and you can make it your drink. And you could give yourself and affordable indulgence to treat yourself for the chore of going to a grocery store. And so I reckon to that, or hearken to that as an example of customization and value is really important for driving really customer adoption and customer trial, right? And so I still remember that promotion, and that was sort of the turnaround of our business. And we've had a pretty positive growth since then. So fast forward to the comments that Sarah Trilling mentioned in our earnings call about what we're seeing, the phenomenon that we're seeing in modifiers. And there are parts of our beverage, like coffee is the most customizable, unique beverage. Well, actually, not just beverage, but item that customers or people buy, right? When you go and you get a sandwich at a store, or if you get a burger at a burger joint, or a pizza, like those are like, maybe you can add olives and maybe I don't know, maybe a couple things. But with Starbucks, you can change the milk, you can change the sweetness, you can change the coffee, you can change what you're putting on top, you can do a lot of things. And with the advent or the introduction of, it's hard to see with my phone, you can see my phone. This becoming the point of sale for our customer, right? Nearly 80% of our transactions today, or sales today, are coming through either drive-throughs throughout the window or through mobile order and pay. And so customers are actually getting to be the barista themselves by building the drink within our app that they're ordering. And they're able to see, gosh, I can add cold foam to this coffee. And cold foam, if you haven't had it, tastes like eating ice cream. And it's basically non-fat milk that we whip with a high-speed blender that creates this really airy, foamy, sweet texture that you're adding to coffee. And so what we're finding is that when customers have control over how they want their beverage built, they're actually being even more exploratory and experimental on how they interact with Starbucks. And the outcome of that is that customers are willing to pay a premium to make their drink their drink. They're certainly being inspired by what's happening on, Instagram posts. People are, making different drinks. And, like one of the things I started doing is putting matcha powder inside a cold foam on top of a dragon fruit refresher. It's vibrant, it's colorful, and it tastes amazing. But that is an example, that change of adding matcha, right? That's, depending on which market that's 50 cents to 75 cents. Adding cold foam, that's $1.25. So I've just added basically $2 to my beverage just to get it the way I want it. And so, yeah, I do think it's maintainable. I do think it's sustainable. It goes back to what got us out of that economic crisis in 2008 is that customization and the importance of making your drink yours. We're now making it easier for customers to do that. Hopefully that helps. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. That really answers the question. Thanks a lot.
You got it.
Super. Thanks very much. Munira? Yes.
Hello, hi.
Hi there.
Thanks for the opportunity. So according to Forbes, Starbucks is using data analytics and artificial intelligence to boost performance. And how do you see these technologies impacting the store's operations and decision-making process and the steps that are taking leverage them effectively?
Yeah, great question. I think it's a capability that we're still developing, is a capability we've invested in. And we've definitely, we've in fact have seen a lot of the benefits of the ability to leverage big data. And, before I start to answer the application, I think what got us into a place where we have access to this much data is the trust that our customers have with us, that we're using their data for good. Right. And so really, our brand is built on human connection. Our brand is built on a relationship with those customers, one customer at a time, one cup at a time, one market at a time, one community at a time. And when we do that and we honor that, call it the trust, our customers are willing to give us a lot of information. And so now that we have that information, we're able to use big data to improve predictions on maybe risk decisions that we're making, whether that's in market planning of where we're going to put stores or where we see communities being built out, whether operationally What are changes that we can make to the workflow or how work gets done for our partners, and what that can do for, limiting, on-the-job injuries as an example, or burnout, or making their job easier. It actually just makes it easier, decisions faster, with more accurate information, such as forecasting and how we're buying ingredients and who we're buying ingredients for. It's helping us really through those fundamentals. It also helps us aggregate information to drive insights, whether it comes to personalization. So we just talked about, the modifier phenomenon, what we're seeing on how our customers are making the drink their own. And what are those, what are ways for us to communicate to high value, most loyal customers? What's the most meaningful way for us to get them to have maybe whether it's another visit, whether it's something we invite them to try? How do we use that to drive value? What does that individual customer see as the unique value that is going to maybe shift some of their wallet share to us? We have, I'd say within my business, our most loyal customers, the Starbucks Rewards customers, like they see our stores as a mecca, as a way to they want to go see and experience. And so we are exploring ways in which we're tying loyalty, so the stars that you're earning as a customer, as a kind of, call it the VIP customer, and how do we create experiences and ways for you to redeem that? And all that comes through us aggregating information, where they live, how we use data to target market to those customers so that we can be super surgical, how we can look at use patterns, and when it maybe customer hasn't been there for a while, or maybe flavor profiles based on what they're buying and what they may like with our new launches. That is another way. I would say under AI or artificial intelligence, I think we're shifting the burden, some of the administrative burden, off of human interaction or capability to technology. And so, I think it's hard for us to think about how that fits, because we are a company built on human connection, and that's always going to be front and center for Starbucks. But it does free up mind share for our partners, and let technology do the less value added work. The more customers, and let us focus on the customer centric tactics. So going back to George's visit, how are we using AI to free up that partner to be able to engage with you, worrying about where are we at in inventory supplies based off of the demand forecast and sales and weather declines, and what that's going to do with the customers wanting to actually walk out into our store. So those are all the different ways in which we're using data today and big data today to improve operations. And you're going to hear us continue to talk about it. Certainly with our new CEO, Lax understands the value of big information and how that can support us and free us to stay focused on the connection.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Hi, Matt. Perfect.
So thank you so much, Ms. Koransky, for being with us today. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah,
so I have a question by Zenku. Unfortunately, he couldn't be with us today. So the question is, what are the strengths and weaknesses of Starbucks licensed stores compared to company-operated stores?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I mean, I would say most of my 20 years at Starbucks has been in the licensed business. And so I love and appreciate the question of what strengths do our licensees offer Starbucks versus even our core stores. What I would start with is reach. So if you go back, and even if you read Howard's first book, Pour Your Heart Into It, he talks about the infancy or the very start of why we went into licensed stores in the first place. And frankly, it's to go where we can't go ourselves. And so the very first licensed store that we opened was inside of an airport. And back then, the way airports operated back then is they had master concessionaires. So whoever that was, whether it's HMS Host, Marriott at the time, they ran everything from the newsstand to the McDonald's, to the Starbucks, to the bar, to the duty-free store, all of it. And so the only way to operate a concept was to license it, to franchise it. And that really started us on down this path of, how do we find highly captive markets where our licensees are uniquely positioned to go? And so that could be inside of a hospital. It could be college campus. So I think it's either Airmark or Compass that runs the food services for NYU. And that's who our partner is in running the Starbucks on your campus. It's access to real estate where we can't gain access to real estate. And they do have unique space. And then the other thing that, going back to the question that you're representing on what the advantages and disadvantages is when the licensed store is just a part of something bigger. Okay, so think about that through the lens of a hotel, as an example. When you have a Starbucks inside of a hotel or a Starbucks inside of a Target, they've already paid for that real estate. They already own that real estate, or they're renting that real estate or leasing the real estate. And so the incremental cost of running retail actually is accretive to top line, but doesn't cost them more from a rent standpoint. So it actually creates leverage for them. Whereas if we were the tenant, we would be paying somebody rent. So that puts a different pressure on our P&L. I think because of that model, the license model, and the legal definition of licensing or fractional, it's called fractional franchising. The legal is we can't be more than a certain percent of their total business. I think the number is about 25%, which means they're not totally dependent on the success of their Starbucks. They can insulate themselves from the performance of their Starbucks. And so in some cases, the Starbucks can just be as an amenity and can be there to make a better student experience. It could be inside of a casino, as an example, in Las Vegas, where it's amenity for their guests. It could be inside of a Disney park, inside of a cruise ship, on a military base. And so it is only a part of the business and can insulate itself as we see ebbs and flows in the economy. Versus if it was an independent franchise or a company operated stores, Starbucks is the business. It's the only business. If we're a part of a bigger business, then I think it helps them insulate. I would also say there are some disadvantages, and some of the disadvantages we've worked on collapsing. One of them is the digital relationship with our customers and the dependency on a point of sale that gives access to Starbucks for its customers. And recently, the last few years, the team developed a product, basically a software and hardware product called Starbucks Connect, which allows our licensees to then gain access to those customers, then offer up the channels like mobile order and pay, and allows us to take some of the burden of the tech development around building a point of sale for a coffee shop. If you're running a hotel, like the last thing you want to worry about is figuring out a point of sale for a coffee shop. That's all we think about. So they do benefit by working with a company that we are in the business. We're in the business with them. And so we can create leverage and economies for them because of this model. Hope that helps.
So Xiang is next. Towards the end, you will see something that she has done, which I hope you will like. So
excellent.
Thank you. First, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being here to answer our students' question. And my question is, with the development of independent coffee shop, some customers may prefer them to chain. I presented my Starbucks strategic plan soon and speak in general, not only about Starbucks. What are effective ways to maintain client loyalty?
Yeah. Great question.
Yeah.
Don't open too many coffee shops on us. I think, to build, there are other coffee concepts, right? So there are cups in the market, and there are different, I think, different expectations for customers. I mean, I think about the independent coffee shops that are out there, and there is a sense of loyalty that happens with customers wanting to, support a smaller independent coffee. And I think that's great. I think there's room for all of us. But if you're out there and you're going to start your own coffee shop and you want to be customer centric and you want to maintain a loyal clientele, it's really the secret sauce is in getting to know your customers and getting to know what your customers want from you. I think I think I've seen other companies do themselves a disservice by telling the customers what they should want versus listening to the customer. And so I think about even the last, 5+ weeks, 6+ weeks on my journey, most recent journey here at Starbucks, and my immersion. Much of my immersion was out doing the work, and being a barista, engaging with the customers, talking to them about their choices, talking to them about what they like from us, what would they like to see more from us. The customer was going to tell you the answer to a lot of your questions. And I think that listening, hearing, and then them seeing you action on that goes a long way in building that loyalty and that credibility that's going to have them come back to your store every time.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yeah.
So the next question is from Mahek. She's been coordinating all these events and helping with the promotion. So yeah.
Nice job.
Hi, thank you so much for joining. Really excited to be here, mainly because me and my team, we have a presentation today for Starbucks strategic plan right after this event. And one of our topics is Starbucks Reserve line. So this is definitely helping us a lot. My question is, what tips would you give students interested in a career in retail marketing for the food and beverage business on how to stand out in this cutthroat environment? What attributes are most important for success in this field, and how many aspiring marketers acquire these attributes?
Yeah. Love it. Great question. Let me, I think there's a couple of things there, and I've talked about some of it already, but let me just maybe amplify a little bit. What I would say to differentiate yourself right now, there's a need for kindness in this world. And this is gonna sound super soft, but it's like real. There's a need for human kindness out there right now. And having a growth mindset of what's possible. I think, doing the task and the work versus talking about what's possible, how are you connecting and being kind with other humans? I think more and more companies are seeing the values. We talk about competing for talent right now. Like, people have to want to come to work for you. Like, it is a very different space. And how you can create your own sense of gravitational pull as an individual, I think that those are things that you're going to want to speak to and talk to. I think to arm yourself and be ready. I think about the two Qs, the EQ and the IQ, right? I talked about EQ earlier. And having, brands are emotional, right? Having, the ability to have empathy with your customer. I talked about that with the client. That's ultimately what marketers need to really be able to help us do. And so I think coming in with that EQ and certainly IQ, right, is about driving the business, right? And we talked a little bit about data and understanding analytics and how it comes down to dollar and cents, no pun intended, but literally, what's the business rationale of the approach, the marketing approach, right? It's tough. I think having a balance of EQ and IQ it's hard. And so I would, as you're heading in and you're having conversations with potential employers, think about yourself being balanced. I know I started with kindness. I talked about connection, but how do you highlight your ability to flex between left brain, right brain, the EQ, the IQ in the moment? So for EQ, how do you learn from the psychology arts or design thinking, doing understandings of, practice behaviors that are doing the opposite of the way it normally is done, having a very diverse perspective. If you're right hand dominant, start opening doors with your left hand. What are the changes that you can do in yourself that is going to get you uncomfortable and get you into what's possible? Learn from economics and finance. It's what you're all doing right now, right? Practice the behaviors of looking at numbers in relative terms and, solving problems in data with assumptions, but taking the time to understand what's feeding the data and perhaps what question are they not asking? Yeah, I mean, I hopefully that helps. I mean, it's
No,
Yeah.
this definitely helped. I like the whole concept of kindness, how you read it. So I
yeah.
agree with that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
That was a great response. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you once again, Mr. Koransky, for being here and giving us the opportunity to talk to you and to ask you questions. Throughout the semester, it has been incredibly interesting to learn about Starbucks and the coffee industry, especially as I come from a country, Panama, that produces coffee, and
Yes.
coffee is a very important part of our culture. With that being said, my question is the following. In the Starbucks career page, it doesn't clearly state whether it hires international students or not. And it's also interesting that you mentioned that the Starbucks reserved customers are mostly tourists. With that being said, how do you think global companies like Starbucks would benefit from hiring international students?
Yeah. Love it. Great. I mean, great question. And I think it's a good call out. At Starbucks, we talk a lot about inclusion, right? We talk about a lot about diversity. And I think about the perspective, the sets of experience, and maybe even just the view of what an international student it could bring. I would say, what we at Starbucks, what we do is we're looking at competitive capability. I do think, as we are heading into this chapter, we are a global company today. I think we're in over 80 plus countries today. I think the renewed focus on that, and you've seen that in some of our more recent announcements, understanding how to navigate and operate in other markets, I think is where an international student, as an example, could really help us. If you look at our business model internationally, there's very few markets in which it's a known market, certainly China and then parts of the UK. The other markets we have built out either joint ventures or licensees in that market that they know that market because they operate in that market. I think the opportunity and the question, which is I think sound and fair, it's like, how do we bring in that talent and capability that can help us with that same approach, and perhaps even think about evolving the business model. So yeah, I think it's interesting. I want to follow up. I want to ask that question around our recruiting organization. I'm not as close to that, but I would love to be able to come back, and maybe George, I can send you a note to pass along to the team on what has been our position, what has been our experience, and if there is some data points that I can share.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Hi, good evening, after whatever time
Good evening to you all. It's late in the evening for all of you. So.
Firstly, I'd like to thank you for reassuring me in my academic decisions, because I actually studied computer science and fine art in undergrad. So your talk about, appreciation for a mix of left brain and right brain.
Yeah.
I will definitely quote that next time someone says I am indecisive. So thank you. But so you were talking before about how now companies need to have this gravitational pull, which is different from the previous market. What was the pull for you? Like, what interested you in working for Starbucks?
Yeah. I'm going to say it, and I genuinely mean it. It was to be a part of something bigger than myself. I think as I did a little bit of research on this company and how its culture, its values, the role that it sees, the platform that we have, and the role that we have around whether it's our position on social issues, economic issues, the communities that we serve and operate in, that resonated with me. It connected me to the company at a different level. You know, the connection into the supply chain as an example, and supply chain isn't always sexy, but you know, for us to grow, right? To grow to, you know, we're at 35,000. If we want to grow to 50,000 or more, we need to make sure that there's coffee to do it. And, you know, we are vested in those communities as well. We are, you know, during my career, I've had the opportunity to go into origin twice. I went to Rwanda in Africa, gosh, God, when it was like 8 years ago. And back then we weren't even buying coffee from that country, but we were investing in it. We were standing up social capabilities. We were standing up hospitals. We were investing in education. We were investing in the community because we believed in the community. And now we are buying coffee there. And, you know, I had a chance to go to Costa Rica just before the pandemic in 2020, and to see the agricultural lens of how we're using science and to remove coffee rust. Coffee rust is a real disease that it's, you know, killing trees. It's lessening the quality of the coffee. And what we've done is basically, you know, we bought a farm a few years ago, Hacienda Alsacia. We're running it like a farmer would. We're not just saying, okay, we're a massive company, we're going to dump a bunch of money, we're going to figure this out. We're like, if we were a farmer, a family farmer, like, how would we figure this out? Like, what would we do in terms of splicing the trees to create rust resistant coffee that we now give to the market? Like, we literally give that strain to the market, because it's not just about the sustainment of our business, it's sustainment about the crop. It's all of those things, right? I gave you a very specific, like, it's all those things that connects me to this company. It's like, I see the value of what I do every day and how it feeds back to an individual's life in another country, whether that's in Panama or otherwise. Whether it's the stores that we're opening in underserved markets, it's the stores that we're opening on military bases for military families. It's the, you know, I'm one of the Pride executive champions for our Pride network. I'm going to be moving into our Black Partner network. Like, how do we create a community to make sure we're inclusive? Like, that feels like a fiber of my being. And that's what connects me. And that's what keeps me here. And, you know, we do every year, we do partner surveys to see, you know, what is our engagement? What are the things we should work on? Feedback, et cetera. But one of the questions that they ask you is, you know, it would take a significant opportunity for me to leave Starbucks. And it's a gradient scale from, yeah, no, wouldn't take that much of an offer, I'm out of here, all the way through. It would take it, you know, all the way to number 7, which is it's highly unlikely that I'd ever leave Starbucks. It's highly unlikely I'd ever leave Starbucks, especially live in Seattle. Probably make a lot more money going down the street selling books. But, you know, but I mean, all the things that I just talked about, I feel a connection to that. And so that gets me out of bed every morning. I love the people I work with. I love what we do. And if you don't love what you do, yeah, you're just turning the cranks. It's got to mean more than that. It has to be something you're connected to, something that brings you joy. Now, all this brings me joy.
That's very insightful, and I'm actually extremely glad that you found a company that aligns with your values. It's very rare.
Thank you. Yeah, I love it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Super great question. Yeah.
Great question. Thank you.
All right. So what I would like to do before we go into the next part is I would like to thank Mahek and Kate and Sian. You will see what she did for us. And also there are 2 of my colleagues who have been working, you know, at least 1 or 2 of them, 12 hours, right, to make all these things possible. So to Patrick and Lisa, you're unable to see them, but thank you very much, yeah, from all of us, from the whole class. And now the students did something, a little video for you that we would like to show you. So
excellent.
You've joined a live Finance for Marketing Decisions class at NYU School of Professional Studies. In our class, we select a Fortune 500 company to learn about finance by making decisions on pricing, headcount, marketing, and profitability. CFOs and CMOs from Disney, Coca-Cola, and McDonald's have joined us to respond to questions from the audience. All speaker sessions are free and open to everyone. And today, over 50 students got together to say,
Thank you, Mr. Koransky. This is a terrific opportunity for students.
ممتنين جدا لهذه الفرصة مستر كارنسكي.
जब हम assignment कर रहे थे,
estamos emocionados por este día.
On behalf of all students from New York,
To Latin America,
Africa,
India,
Indonesia, Vietnam,
and China.
धन्यवाद Mr. Koransky.
谢谢 Mr. Koransky.
Cảm ơn Mr. Koransky.
Terima kasih, Mr. Koransky.
Thank you, Mr. Koransky.
Love it. Thank you. Cup filling. Thank you.